Sewing of Jhabla. In the previous session, we cut the fabric pieces for the Jhabla. We will now sew the fabric pieces together. We will first sew the facing piece for the neck opening, then the side seam, then hem the sleeves and bottom, and finally hem the buttonholes and facing of the Jhabla. At the end of the session, you will be able to sew the fabric pieces for a Jhabla. Let's first familiarize with the tools and materials needed to sew a Jhabla. They are fabric pieces, matching thread, sewing machine, a pair of small scissors, measuring tape, tailor's chalk, and seam ripper. We will first sew the facing for the neck opening of the Jhabla. For this, take the facing piece and keep its wrong side under the sewing machine. Now, fold the outer edges 1/4 inches over to the wrong side. Sew slow and keep folding the edges over. This is not that easy because the edges are curved. It is helpful to hold down the little pleats with a pin, but remove the pin when close to the machine needle. This is how the facing looks after sewing. Now take the body piece and place the facing on top of the neckline with the right sides of both facing each other. Also, ensure that the notches of both match. Place the 2-inch long backing lengthwise and centered over the center front notch on the wrong side of the body piece. With a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew all round the neck opening by matching the neck curves. Make little clips in the seam allowance where the curve is strong. Now press the facing inwards as shown. Then turn the facing with the wrong side facing inwards and press the seam allowance towards the facing. Now top stitch along the folded edge of the facing. This stitch ensures that the facing will not roll outside of the neck and will therefore provide an even and clean look. We will now sew the sides of the Jhabla with a side seam. Fold the piece at the shoulder with the wrong side outside and align the side seams. Sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting and ending with reverse stitch on both sides. Follow the seam allowance evenly along the curved cut edge. Repeat the same procedure for the other side also. We will now hem the sleeve of the Jhabla. Turn the dress to the right side. Fold the sleeve cut edge 1/4 inch towards the wrong side of the fabric like a shirt tail hem and press it flat. Fold the fabric over a second time, keeping the cut edge in between the layers as a guide. Now, top stitch around the sleeves. We have finished hemming the sleeves of the jhabla. Next, we will hem the bottom part of the jhabla. When drafting, we added 1 inch for the bottom hem. Whatever measurements you take while drafting, always relate to the same while sewing. Fold the cut edge at the bottom, ½ inch towards the wrong side of the fabric and press all around. Fold the fabric over a second time. You can take the cut edge in between the layers as a guide. Start sewing from one side seam and ending with a reverse stitch. We will now stitch the buttonholes for the jhabla. First, let's see how to determine the spot for placing the buttonholes. For this, we will first fold the front of the dress in half at the notches. The buttonhole will begin at a point which is ½ inch away from the fold and ¼ inch away from the upper edge. We will stitch a buttonhole which is ½ inch long. We will now stitch the buttonholes on the fabric. Remember, we have the backing piece at the side of the front neckline. This will help us to identify the front side and the back side of the jhabla. Now, fold the front of the dress in half at the notches. Mark a point such that it is ½ inch away from the fold and ¼ inch away from the upper edge. Now from this point, draw a ½ inch long line at both sides of the center front. Using a seam ripper, pierce through both layers of the outer fabric and the backing piece along the ½ inch line. Now secure the raw edges with a buttonhole stitch. We will now fix the facing with a hemming stitch. For this, fold the facing inwards. Now, fix the facing with a vertical hemming stitch all around. The facing can also be stitched down by machine. We will now cut out the extra padding. Be very careful not to cut the hemming while doing this. We will now stitch the string for the jhabla. Fold the two cut edges of the string lengthwise, ¼ inch towards the center and press them down. We are keeping both ends unfolded because we will attach bangles and so the cut edges will be covered. Then, fold the string in half, aligning the folded edges. Top stitch the closed two folded edges all along the string. We will now insert the string to the facing. For this, pin a safety pin on to one end of the string and insert through the buttonhole inside the casing. Guide the safety pin with the string through the casing. After exiting the safety pin with the string, remove the pin. We will now stitch the bangles for the string. Fold one of the two square pieces to a triangle with the right side outside. Place the end of the string on top but off-centered. Fold the bigger triangle half over the string. Take the two remaining corners and fold them along the cut edge but only halfway. Now, sew starting with a reverse stitch along the cut edge until the end of the narrow corners. Then, pivot the bangle to the left and end with a reverse stitch. Trim off the excess fabric above the seam and pull the bangle to the right side. Repeat the same for the other square piece also. The string with bangle for the jhabla is ready. Let's iron the finished jhabla to give it a professional and neat look. Now, we can pull the string to create a gathered neck. Our jhabla is ready. It is very important to verify the various aspects of quality of the finished product. So, let's do a quality check to ensure that our product is of good quality. We will first verify if the measurement of the total length of the jhabla matches with the measurements taken. Check if the bottom hem is even. Now check if the seams are even and seam allowances are parallel. Ensure that the top stitch pulls the facing inward. Also, check if the outside fold is neat and clean and the facing is not seen. Verify if the hem at the sleeves are even. Check if the hem and seam are joined without corners. Finally, see if the product has been ironed properly. In this session, we have learnt to sew the fabric pieces for a jhabla. Before we conclude, let's take a look at the key steps involved in sewing a jhabla. Step 1. Sew the facing for the neck opening of the jhabla. Step 2. Sew the sides of the jhabla with a side seam. Step 3. Hem the sleeves and bottom of the jhabla. Step 4. Stitch the buttonholes and hem the facing. Step 5. Stitch the string and insert it in the facing. Also, stitch the bangles for the string. Step 6. Check the quality of the finished jhabla. With that, we have come to the end of this session.